Hello, and welcome to the Lessons Unlocked podcast. I'm your host, Colleen McCracken. I've been looking for ways to increase music education accessibility, and I think this podcast can make a difference. The Lessons Unlocked podcast uses a virtual platform to engage with student musicians through masterclass style instruction. Students may submit a recording of their playing for in-depth feedback to be shared with all listeners. This way, students who submit can get feedback, and any other student with access to the podcast can learn from the masterclass. There's also a Q&A section to the podcast, so please submit any questions that come up for you. Our name to know this week is Reena Esmail. The following is the biography from her website, reenaesmail.com, and I will link that in the description below. Indian-American composer Reena Esmail works between the worlds of Indian and Western classical music and brings communities together through the creation of equitable music spaces. Esmail's life and music was profiled on Season 3 of PBS Great Performances series Now Hear This, as well as Frame of Mind, a podcast from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Esmail divides her attention evenly between orchestral, chamber, and choral work. She has written commissions for ensembles including the Los Angeles Master Chorale, Seattle Symphony, Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, and Kronos Quartet, and her music has been featured on multiple Grammy-nominated albums, including The Singing Guitar by Conspiraire, Bruit by Amani Winds, and Healing Modes by Brooklyn Ryder. Many of her choral works are published by Oxford University Press. Esmail is the Los Angeles Master Chorale's 2020 to 2025 Swan Family Artist in Residence and was Seattle Symphony's 2020 to 2021 Composer in Residence. She has been in residence with the Tanglewood Music Center and Spoleto Festival. She holds awards/fellowships from United States Artists, the S&R Foundation, the American Academy of Arts and Letters, and the Kennedy Center. Esmail holds degrees in composition from the Juilliard School and the Yale School of Music. Her primary teachers have included Susan Boddy, Aaron J. Kernis, Christopher Theophanidis, Christopher Roos, and Samuel Adler. She received a Fulbright Nehru grant to study Hindustani music in India. Her Hindustani music teachers include Srami Lakshmi Shankar and Gaurav Mazumdar. She currently studies and collaborates with Saley Oak. Her doctoral thesis entitled Finding Common Ground, Uniting Practices in Hindustani and Western Art Musicians explores the methods and challenges of the collaborative process between Hindustani musicians and Western composers. Esmail was composer in residence for Street Symphony 2016 to 2018 and is currently an artistic director of Shastra, a nonprofit organization that promotes cross-cultural music connecting music traditions of India and the West. She currently resides in her hometown of Los Angeles, California. This week's piece of the week is Zinfandel by Reena Esmail. From the program notes, Reena states, "One of my first pieces of music was a solo flute piece called Chardonnay, written in 2000. 10 years later, when the commission came for this piece, it was with the stipulation that it be called Zinfandel. At this rate, I'm hoping to write a solo woodwind piece every 10 years named for a wine. In parentheses, yes, I already have the names picked out. More seriously, though, this piece was written at an inflection point of my life. I had just begun my journey into studying Indian classical music, and this piece was one of the first ones in which I tried to get a sense of this incredible music that ultimately became a major influence on my style. The beginning section just starts to bend toward the idea of a rag, both in its unique characteristic pitch collection and in its development of the melody, just barely hinting at a Hindustani alap. While writing the fast section, I held an image in my mind, a glimmer of light reflecting and refracting off the surface of the dark, rich wine. It reflects in one place, pauses momentarily, then flits asymmetrically to appear in another place. The liquid is silent and still, but the surface is moving very delicately." Now, this piece was originally written for bassoon, but has since been transcribed for flute. If you'd like to hear a recording of it, Reena has a video recording of Christina Jennings performing this piece on her website, once again, reenaesmail.com, and that link will be in the description below. The highlighted organization this week is the Mid-South Flute Society. This organization had its beginnings as the Memphis Flute Society, founded by Ruth Ann McLean. It soon became obvious that an organization was needed that served a much larger area than just Memphis, and the name was changed to Mid-South to reflect the area served. This has become a fairly large organization, which draws members from Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, East Texas, Southern Illinois, and Southern Kentucky. The main meeting of the Mid-South Flute Society is the Flute Festival, which is held in March of every year. In alternate years, the festival is held in Memphis, Tennessee, the center of membership. In other years, it's hosted in another area of membership away from Memphis. Their festival features a number of competitions, including a young artist competition that draws entries from across the country. There's always a guest artist who performs and teaches a masterclass. Recent guest artists have included Rhonda Larson, Alexis Dill, Jill Felber, Dennis Boryakov, Benita Boyd, Ian Clark, and Jim Walter. There are also flute choirs and a number of presentations of interest to flutists of all ages and interests. To learn about plans for the annual Flute Festival or other flute-related news of interest to their membership and friends, please check out their Facebook and Instagram pages. It's a great way to learn about concerts, competitions, visiting guest artists, and other flute activities. Our performer today is playing an orchestral excerpt. So before we get started, I'd like to talk a little bit about what that is. What exactly are orchestral excerpts? Put simply, they're short passages taken directly from orchestral repertoire, just a few lines or maybe a couple pages that showcase key technical and musical challenges. Think of them as the greatest hits of audition material, tough, exposed, and designed to test how well you really know your instrument. These excerpts are used primarily in orchestral auditions. Whether you're auditioning for a professional symphony, a conservatory, or a youth orchestra, you're usually asked to prepare a list of specific excerpts chosen by the organization. Why? Because these passages are where the music gets real, where mistakes can't hide, and interpretation really matters. Let's break it down. Excerpts often require precision in rhythm, control in dynamics, and a solid understanding of style. For example, a flutist might be asked to play the opening of Daphnis and Chloe by Ravel, an exposed lyrical solo that demands total breath control. So how do you prepare them? Here are 3 steps to get you started. Step 1, know the context. Never play an excerpt in a vacuum. Listen to the full piece, several recordings if possible. Understand where your part fits in. Are you doubling another instrument, leading a section? Context shapes interpretation. Step 2, practice for clarity, not just accuracy. Yes, you need to hit the right notes, but your articulation, phrasing, and tone are what set you apart. Try recording yourself, slow things down, use a metronome, focus on making your intentions as clear as possible. Step 3, simulate the pressure. Run mock auditions, play in front of friends, teachers, or even just a voice memo app. The more you practice performing excerpts under pressure, the more natural it'll feel in a real audition. And here's a pro tip. Don't just learn the notes, learn the character. Is it noble? Is it anxious? Is it playful? Your musical storytelling is what makes you stand out in a field of technically capable players. So how do you know which excerpts make that greatest hits list? I recommend purchasing Jeannie Baxtresser's Orchestral Excerpts book. She recently published a 2nd edition, so I'd honestly recommend getting both. She includes her personal tips and tricks for nailing each excerpt, and it gives you a great resource for which excerpts are likely to come up in an audition. All right, so today we have Bao from Illinois performing an orchestral excerpt, and that excerpt is Mendelssohn's Scherzo from A Midsummer Night's Dream. Take it away. Congratulations, Bao. Thank you so much for sending this in. I really appreciate you sharing your playing with all of us. I'd like to start by sharing a little bit of information about this excerpt with the audience. So I'm going to read a description from Jeannie Baxtresser's Orchestral Excerpt book. Accurate rhythm and clarity of articulation are the technical requirements of this excerpt. It is equally important to play expressively by playing long, well-shaped phrases, avoiding an accent on the first note of each bar. Maintain a steady tempo by practicing with a metronome to make sure you don't rush the notes before a breath or take too much time for a breath. If you have difficulty with breathing, play with a lighter sound until you feel more comfortable with the long phrases. In an audition, you should breathe at the 9th and 20th bars after P, just after the first 8th note. In an orchestral setting, with greater need for projection, you can take a quick breath 3 bars after Q in place of the G if necessary. Be sure to practice this excerpt in different tempi in preparation for an audition. So the suggested tempo here is between 80 and 88, and that is to the dotted quarter note. Now, frankly, this excerpt is very hard for flutists of all ages and levels. So, Bao, I really do applaud you for choosing to do this excerpt. Choosing to prepare it for whatever you may be preparing it for is it's brave because it's one of those excerpts that some flutists will, if they see that excerpt, they may choose not to take the audition. So congratulations on even deciding to work on this excerpt because it really is very difficult. Now let's get into some more focused and specific feedback. So something I think you could incorporate a little bit more is some phrasing. So you're doing a good job of playing the notes, and of course mistakes are going to happen. So please don't get down on yourself about those at any point. What we're looking for is a little bit more drive. So now I know we really aren't given much to work with dynamically here. And I think it's okay to add some of your own dynamics as long as it's somewhat within the piano, mezzo forte range. Given that this is an orchestral solo, it's never going to truly be our piano sound, right? An orchestral solo piano is going to be different than a flute alone piece piano. I hope that makes sense. So the piano dynamic for an orchestral solo is going to be significantly louder than the piano dynamic for a flute alone piano. And what I really think Mendelssohn means here with the piano dynamic is I think he's trying to communicate to the player that he wants it light rather than heavy. I feel like if this was written with forte, it would be more likely that flutists are going to play it with a heavy sound, heavy articulation, and with a more heavy mood. And I think it's clear that he wants a light kind of flowing. He doesn't want it to feel weighed down at all. And I think that's more of what he is communicating with the piano dynamic than an actual dynamic decision. The next thing that comes to mind for me is it almost sounds like your air is stopping between every note, which for this excerpt in particular is going to make it very hard for it to sound like it's just flowing through. So I would recommend practicing this slurred a lot. In my personal preparation of this, I take the tempo down to 60 and I practice it in very small sections slurred, and then I'll slowly make my way up to my goal tempo. And by doing it slurred, I prevent any stops in the air. The air is used to just continuing on through rather than stopping with the articulation. And since it sounds like that's what might be going on for you, I would definitely practice it slurred. There, I heard some more of that phrasing that I was describing in the beginning. So if we can go ahead and apply that to the start of the excerpt as well, I think you're going to be golden. So we had a few tempo discrepancies in sections there at the end. So I would really practice this with a metronome, particularly with the subdivisions on. I like to have it as opposed to just giving me the 1 beat per measure, because for those of us following along, we are in 3/8 with this. So rather than just receiving a beat on the dotted quarter note, getting the 3/8 notes per measure can be a big help, and I think it's going to help with playing evenly on toward the end with the dugga 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 dee dugga dugga dee da da. That wasn't quite even, which I'm sure you know, and mistakes happen. So again, please don't beat yourself up about that. That's more for our listeners at home. Thank you so much for sending this in. I'm very excited to have our first orchestral excerpt submitted in. And I am also from Illinois, so let's go Illinois. Everyone give a round of applause in your car, in your house, wherever you are, to Bow from Illinois. Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to go over some free resources. I've recently added some free downloads onto the podcast website. That website is lessonsunlockedpodcast.com. And the first one is my warm-up packet that I designed. So it's labeled Colleen's Warm-Up Packet PDF. You can click on it. And just to walk you through it a little bit, the first thing on there is stretches, and it shows some visuals of different stretches. I think it's important to warm up our bodies before we ask it to play the flute. And then I have nerve glides. Not everyone is going to know what nerve glides are, and that's okay. Nerve glides help prevent nerve injury. So as flutists, we are at a higher than average risk of nerve issues because we are using our small muscles in our arms so much that they can constrict the nerves and cause pain or other problems. So I've included some nerve glides in this warm-up packet to help flutists in preventing injury. Next, I have a little note that says find support center, stand on one leg, do a brief wall sit, anything to engage your lower abdominal muscles. Continuing on, I have long tones, intonation, and improvisation. So long tones by ear. Pick a favorite tune from Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, etc., and do your long tones to the song. You can find chord progressions online or attempt by ear. Learning by ear is an excellent skill and will help you with intonation. You don't have to sound good with this. Every time I do it, I sound bad, and that's okay. Like, is it really that bad? No, it's just, maybe the notes don't sound as complimentary as I would like them to. But it's good practice, and there's value in dissonance. So if you play a note that sounds really dissonant to the song, it's okay. And I've included the chord progressions for Lover by Taylor Swift in this packet. So if you want to start with that one, some of the work is already done for you. Next, I have scales, transposition, and memorization. So I give you a scale pattern, and I only give you 3 scales. I ask you to apply it to the others. So use the following scale pattern for all major and minor scales in addition to any other scale patterns you enjoy. Honestly, when it comes to scales, whatever makes you practice them, do it. And if you don't like these patterns, I will not be offended. Just practice whatever scale patterns you like. This is simply a suggestion for something that may be enjoyable to do. I would set a goal of playing scales by memory, and I would practice different articulation patterns. Some articulation pattern suggestions can be found in Tafnell and Gobert's Daily Studies, which is a book that we will get to later in this episode. The next page of my warm-up packet is articulation, where I include 2 examples of excellent rap songs for practicing articulation. Rap artists are some of the best articulators out there, so we should learn from them. In the examples I provide, I found some iconic beat patterns for your articulation pleasure. However, you can increase the difficulty by attempting to articulate along with the rapper's lyrics. Please be cognizant of language in popular music and choose clean versions when playing along if appropriate. Moving on to Tafanel Gobert Daily Studies. This is probably the most famous flute scale book or flute technique book to ever exist for Western musicians. Some people refer to it as like the Bible of flute playing. And that's because practicing the patterns in this book really get your technique to an excellent place where you can execute some very, very difficult passages quite well. So we have several daily studies and we have multiple translations of instructions. So there are English translations of the instructions for each daily study. EJ1 refers to étude du jour, so like study of the day in French. So that's what it means. EJ just means daily study. And again, there are several of these different patterns. I believe there are a total of 17, and they are all quite extensive. So I would definitely not try to play through all of these in one practice session or really even one day. But working your way through different ones, like I really love EJ4. Yes, EJ4 is really good. And when I studied in France, this was kind of the default way that my French teacher expected me to play scales rather than playing them just straight up and down. When he said scales, he meant EJ4 style scales. So I highly recommend doing this if you intend to travel to France, because it's likely that this is what they'll be expecting for scales. The next free download that I have on the website is TNG, which stands for Tafanel Gobert, Complete Flute Method. Now, this includes general technique, ornaments, tonguing, daily exercises, progressive studies, 12 studies for virtuosity, style, and difficult passages. So it's over 60 pages. It's a pretty extensive book. Like the daily studies book, the instructions are translated into multiple languages. So don't be thrown off if you're seeing French and German. I promise there's English in there too. You just have to check for it. Normally, English is directly to the right of the French. But this is another really excellent book. It walks you through a lot of how we play the flute. It starts us out with some long tones, which is exactly how I recommend starting out a practice session. And again, if you find that this version of long tones is boring to you or you don't like it, then try my warm-up book version of long tones, or, vice versa. If you don't like my warm-up book version of long tones, then use this book's version. So the next one is called The Flute Made Easy. The full title is Flute Made Easy, Thorough and Progressive Method of Study, Embracing the Rudiments of Music and Numerous Examples and Exercises, the whole forming a complete manual of instruction for the flute, to which are added selections from the operas and a collection of the latest and most popular songs, polkas, waltzes, marches, etc. Boston, published in Boston. Okay. It starts out with first lesson, which I really appreciate. It starts us out at the beginning. How many notes are there in music? I wish it said how many notes are there in Western music. It says 7. In other cultures, there are more notes. So that's the reason for you to go explore music of other cultures. They have more notes than we do. But they answer questions like, how are musical ideas expressed in writing? By characters called notes. And it breaks down rhythm and note value. It does a really good job introducing us to music as well as to the flute. And I like that it's kind of written in a Q&A style, at least for the first section. So I think that's fun. And then we get into some exercises, of course. All right, the next one is called Foundation to Flute Playing by Ernest Frederick Wagner. This book includes notes on position, caring for the flute, how to practice, what to practice, transposition, fingering, breathing, tuning, time, what to do before playing, rudiments of music, kinds of notes, kinds of rests, slurring and tonguing, syncopation. It includes major and minor chord exercises. It includes a lot. So I would recommend checking this one out. Especially if you want to teach. I think it's a good tool for teaching because it describes everything in first lesson, second lesson, third lesson, which I always appreciate a kind of structured step-by-step of what to do. So if you're using this to practice rather than to teach, maybe do like first lesson one day, second lesson the next day, and that type of thing. Or, if you practice multiple times a day, one lesson per session. But this is a very excellent book. It's quite thorough, so it's over 120 pages, but I do think it's worth your time. And the final free resource that I have on my website, other than the podcast, of course, is Otto Lange's newly revised Tutor for Flute. So this is another pretty thorough book that goes through the rudiments of music, durations of notes, rests, dots, triplets, double triplets, groupings, instructions for the flute, how to hold the flute. It really takes us through everything we need to know when it comes to starting the flute. So for all of my young flutists, I would recommend this one as well as the last one, the Foundation to Playing. So we've got Tutor for the Flute and Foundation to Playing that I really recommend for our new flutists. And then for our more advanced or flutists who have just been playing a little bit longer and might need some harder exercises to stay engaged and interested, I would recommend the Taffanel-Gobert Daily Studies and the Taffanel-Gobert Complete Flute Method. The Flute Made Easy I recommend mostly for teachers. It's called the Flute Made Easy, but I think it is a better guide of how teaching the flute can be easier. I hope that makes sense. So those are 6 free downloads on the website, lessonsunlockedpodcast.com. Please check those out. And as always, check out the free resources on imslp.com. This is where I got some of these resources. This is where I was introduced to several pieces originally. I cannot recommend IMSLP enough. So please go check it out. And for our adult friends who maybe have a job, consider financially supporting IMSLP. I think it's $32 a year, and then you don't have to wait the 15 seconds before you download something. So if that sounds like a nice deal to you, I do recommend doing that to support IMSLP. That's all for this episode of the Lessons Unlocked podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you to our performer of the day, Bao from Illinois, and a final thank you to all music educators. Go listen to Zinfandel by Reena Esmail, and I'll have more for you next time. Bye.